Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Hamid Ghafoor. So I lead BDO's social housing team across the north of England. And so many of you are aware that we've recently issued the Social Housing Barometer, which looks at key trends impacting on the social housing sector through a survey which we've conducted with a number of finance teams across the country in the social housing sector. And interestingly, that sort of coincided with the sector risk profile, which has come out from the regulator, and also the white paper and the NHA Code of Governance. So there's a lot of change, a lot of issues coming out from these things, and a lot of risks. I have with me today Craig Garner from Community Housing Group, based in Preston. Craig is the Executive Director of Resources at that organisation, and we're going to have a discussion around what are the key issues that he's seen over the last 12 months and what strategic aspects he sees in terms of change around some of the risks that are coming through from a wider perspective. So, Craig, you just want to introduce yourself, and we can start having a bit of a discussion around some of these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Craig Garner, Executive Director of Resources at Community Gateway, based in Preston. Just a bit background about Community Gateway, the first gateway association in the country. Stock transfer 15 years ago. What's different about gateway associations is we allow our tenants to be members, so effective shareholders in the business, opportunity to vote at our AGM on various matters. We have probably about 2,500 members of our tenant population. We have 6,600 homes that we own and manage to date. Ambitious development program. Our corporate plan is to develop over 600 homes, affordable homes, over the next 5 years up to 2024, and that's progressing well, albeit slight slowdown with COVID, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that shortly.
So from your organisational perspective, obviously when we've had a really challenging year in terms of COVID, the impact of COVID on the organisation, on the sector in general, but then particularly on your organisation, how have you seen that pan out? And actually, how do you feel coming out of that process? Hopefully now we're coming with a vaccine, and there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. But from your perspective, how have you seen all that? How did you react to that, and where do you think you are in terms of all that at this moment in time?
Yeah, I think we're very keen to sort of continue working with our partners, our contractor partners. We have quite a number of schemes that are board approved, and one particular contractor sort of approached and said, we want to continue working up some schemes. We had 3 board approved schemes with a particular contractor, and they were conscious that they might have to fill up staff, so we supported them, the design and planning team, giving them a little bit of support financially in that sort of early period to enable them to sort of continue with those particular schemes. Thankfully, I think of those 3 schemes, I think 2 are due to start early in the new year and 1's in for planning now. So, we wanted to keep working and obviously support our partners to do that. Inevitably, and I think we're no different to anybody else. That the whole program slowed down quite a lot. There was a clear hiatus for a 3-month period. But we're optimistic that we can continue with our program and deliver the much needed homes around Preston that everybody wants. Clearly Brexit is looming, and that's another risk that may affect the supply chain. So that's something we're watching very closely at the moment. There's no clear signs that that's going to affect us, but it's certainly something we're keeping a very close eye on.
Right, and in terms from a wider perspective, in terms of, you've talked about development there, but from a housing management perspective and just from a financial perspective, how have you dealt with the challenges around that, and at this moment in time, where do you think you are around those points in particular?
Yeah, I think we entered this really not knowing what was going to happen. And clearly, you start to look at the sort of financial position you're in. I think like a lot of the sector, we're in a pretty decent shape, plenty of liquidity. We did a PP in middle of lockdown, which was challenging in itself, but that was part of our plans to give sufficient funding for our future development program. So that aided our position. Thankfully, our performance has been maintained. Arrears levels are holding steady and rent collection the same. But again, clearly, the sort of furlough scheme and when that ends is something that we're all watching to see the impact. Christmas is always a sort of challenging time for a lot of our residents, and something we're sort of working to support them through. And we've developed our own support hub, which includes food provision. We've got a small food hub for our residents on one of our community estates, clearly offering lots of welfare advice and support, certainly as well through the summer months. We set up a school uniform bank, which helped support 300 families, 500 children, when they were going back to school, in terms of having the uniforms and the kit that they needed. So a lot of help in our communities, once we established that we were in a solid position, financially, but we've, clearly as a community-based association want to continue with that support.
Excellent. And are those the couple of things you talked about there? Is that initiatives that you have developed because of COVID, or is that something you would have done anyway?
No. I think we've got a very clear corporate plan. It's all about investing in our homes and new homes. Supporting communities and individuals within those communities, and supporting our partners to deliver the best services we can. So, our corporate plan hasn't changed at all. I think what we developed a couple of years ago is still right for the business and right for the future. I think we've probably accelerated some of the activity, probably, I would say. A good example of that is homeless provision. A clear message from our tenants was they wanted to do more around homeless, and we took on the homeless hostel from a provider who failed last year in support of our local authority, and that was quite challenging in lockdown because clearly, the homeless hostel wasn't COVID safe. We had to move 20 residents out into our own homes, and that's proved really, really successful. But as I said before, our corporate plan, it hasn't changed. We don't envisage any significant change in that, and so it's more about accelerating some of the things that we wanted to do.
You mentioned at the start the unique setup that you've got in terms of being a gateway, so that is different. And do you think, obviously what we've seen in the last couple of weeks and stuff coming out from the white paper, but also this general trend of the last couple of years where post Grenfell we've seen a much bigger emphasis not just on health and safety but tenants and hearing tenants' voices. In terms of what you're seeing coming out from the white paper in particular, and interestingly, when you look at the social barometer housing barometer that we issued, government policy was really high up in terms of the risks that people felt that were out there. Did you feel, how well prepared do you feel about in terms of some of those new points, new issues coming out, but also by the fact that structure you have already is unique?
Yeah, I think we've never really diverged from who we are and what we do, and we've always had tenants on the board. Our chair is tenant. We've always had a tenants committee which sort of feeds into that. We've always had scrutiny, of our key services. So we don't believe there's anything different in the white paper to what we do now. I think it's more about continuing to do it and do it better. I think certainly one of the things that we've wanted to do, and again, as accelerated through COVID, is sort of digital engagement. It's something that, we want to really encourage and include a wider base of our population. So that's something we've certainly looked to do more of, during the last 6 to 9 months, and that's gone very, very well. We've had launched a tenant engagement portal. So that's quite recent in terms of, giving people the opportunity to do that. We've had a lot of digital sort of skills sessions with our tenants as well, online sessions. So, that's something that we want to do more of and encourage more people to get involved in different ways. So I think, as I said before, we want to carry on doing what we're doing. We don't think we're fundamentally changing our approach, but we'd like to do things in a slightly different way and acknowledge that our tenant population wants to engage in different ways. So rather than the traditional sort of meeting in an office, or can we do things differently in COVID's, provide an opportunity to sort of push some of those opportunities.
Okay, now and I think it's really interesting talking around some of those points in terms of the focus that you've continued to have that focus in the last few years, where arguably other associations from a tenant perspective have moved away, because the regulatory piece had a different focus, didn't it, really, in terms of governance and viability, where tenants were still involved, but it wasn't the same as what we had previously, and actually what we're appearing it'll be the regulatory framework will be in the future as well.
Very much so.
So in terms from your perspective, what do you see as the key challenges for your organisation as you move forward? And so some of these may be linked, to the sector, but some of these may be more specific. But at this moment in time, what do you see as some of those key challenges?
I think the challenges are having, the right balance, in terms of what our aspirations are. Clearly we want to invest in new homes, and that's absolutely paramount. But equally, we need to invest in our existing homes and ensure that those are fit for now and for the future. And the carbon neutral agenda is enormous. It's absolutely enormous. So, that has to factor into ours and everybody else's plans. So that's a very, very key consideration. Alongside, I guess the conflicts around all the other things that we want to do as an organisation, in terms of supporting our communities and our partners. But I think, the key thing is, we can't do everything on our own. And I think we need to sort of work with partners to deliver, the best services we can for our tenants and our communities. So, and that's the challenge. Having the right balance, not trying to do everything ourselves, but actively working with others to achieve, the best common goal.
And do you think that's going to become, for organisations, they're going to have some difficult choices to make? Because as you say, the decarbonisation piece, in terms of the existing stock and some of the costs involved in that are significant. So, do you think our organisations are going to have to make some difficult choices about what they're really focusing on in the future?
Without doubt, as we stand today, the costs are phenomenal, and I think organisations will be very fortunate if they can afford to do it. I think we're in a reasonable shape in terms of, we're around sort of the 80% EPC level C at the moment for our stock, but there's still 20% to go at, and EPC levels doesn't mean carbon neutral. So that there's a lot of work to do. So it's inevitable that that may affect people's future development plans. However, we've got to be positive that I think sort of a saying from an old tutor of mine was, necessity is the mother of invention. So I do hold out, positive hope that, as time passes, we will find ways and means of doing things better, cheaper, more effectively. And, we will come to a solution. So by 2050, we actually get to where we need to be. But as we stand now, that's difficult to see, very difficult to see. So, but I think, looking at a lot of other organisations, the building safety requirements is another major pressure. I think at Gateway we're quite fortunate in that we don't have those risks at the moment, but we're learning from what that means because clearly we have stock where we have vulnerable residents who need to have safe and secure homes. So we're not naive enough to think that doesn't apply to us. So that there's a mix of pressures that the sector is facing, and some of those are absolutely significant. But I think that wherever there's a will, there's a way, and we will get there. But I think the partnership working is going to become more and more important. I think
definitely. Just in terms of obviously the last few months and the staffing and workforce, in terms of the flexibility and agility that they've shown at your organisation, and how do you see that in terms of how has that worked for yourselves, but how do you see that panning out in the future as well?
Yeah, it's a really good question, that, because I know a lot of organisations have taken decisions to sort of reduce office space, close offices and the like. We've found that people can work from home relatively productively, but as a community-based organisation, we have an office in Preston, and we see that continuing. I've certainly felt, probably more recently, that people are missing that interaction, with their colleagues, socially, but also, there's that informal intelligence that you gain and gather from being in the office with colleagues, which you miss because you're working remotely. So I think things will change. I think, personally speaking, I don't think Community Gateway will change significantly in terms of our office accommodation. I genuinely believe we'll want to use the benefits that we've got from this last 9 months. Certainly we've proved we can work more agilely. We've got the technology to do that, but we still value people working together as a one collective team.
I think it's really interesting, actually, the way, because what you're almost talking about in terms of the ethos of the organisation.
Very much so.
Because this is about the whole piece that you've talked about when you talked about tenants, and you've talked about the development you do and the stuff you're doing in the community, and that needs to be consistent all the way through in terms of the organisation. So this isn't just you saying we're Community Gateway and that's what we do, we're ticking a box. This is your organisation, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's credit to the people who've worked there for so long. The culture and the ethos in the organisation has never really changed. But we've always wanted to adapt and improve and do things better and differently where we can. But it's always been about serving the tenants, ensuring they've got a very active voice, and listening to them so that we offer the right things at the right time. But clearly wanting to work towards the sort of the national agenda as well.
No, that's brilliant, Craig. I think that sort of brings us to the end. I think on that note, that sort of gives us a really good summary of where your organisation's at and how strong you are and prepared you are in terms of the future, in terms of what you need. So just to say thank you very much for your time today. It's been really interesting, fascinating to talk to you, especially in terms of the uniqueness that your organisation has as well, and how you've coped with what's happened and how you're then going to deal with that in the future. So thank you very much for your time today.
No, thanks, Simon. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Cheers.